Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second meeting of the World Radio Communication Conference Advisory Committee as we prep for WRC-19. We are here today to consider status reports and preliminary recommendations of the informal working groups. I can't help but note the importance of these preliminary reviews as we head towards the upcoming CTEL meeting in November in the Dominican Republic, and as we sort of strengthen the U.S. position, the work that all of you are doing is so important to that. So thank you very much to the chairs and the vice chairs and all the members of the working groups. We have 17 preliminary reviews to take up today, so we will get to that after just a little bit of housekeeping. And first, though, I will recognize my vice chair, Chris, and see if you would like to give any opening comments.
Thanks, Tom. I just want to thank the members of the various IWGs. I know a lot of work went into these, a lot of meetings, and the chairs and vice chairs of those groups. I know you worked hard to get these 17s, quite a few, for this early in the process. So thanks for all your hard work.
The second item on the agenda is actually the approval of the agenda. That is WAC Document 6. So I will open it up to see if anyone has any comments or objections to the agenda. By the way, obviously you'll have opportunity to speak throughout the meeting today. If you do have comments to make, please be sure to identify yourself and who you represent before we get started. Any comments on the agenda? Looks like no, so we will deem the agenda approved. One more housekeeping matter is the minutes from our first meeting back in August. Any comments or concerns about the minutes? There are none. Very good. We will deem those approved. Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Tom. At this point, number 4 on the agenda, NTIA draft preliminary reviews and proposals. Is there someone from NTIA here who would like to give us an update on the Iraq radio conference subcommittee process? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Maybe we'll...
running late, maybe?
Yeah, maybe we can come back to that if Charles or Brandon or Brian show up. So, thanks. So on to number 5. This is the IWG-1, Maritime, Aeronautical, and Radio Services. I'd like to invite Joe Kramer, who's the chair of the committee, to present the report of the IWG-1 meetings. And following the report, we can have any general questions, and then we'll go through each of the agenda items.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. IWG4 held, we had 4 meetings since the last WAC meeting, and we were very productive and have for your consideration today 4 documents or preliminary positions for your review. The topics we have for your consideration encompass important maritime and aviation issues. Specifically, we drafted preliminary views enabling maritime VHF data exchange under Agenda Item 1.9.2. We have 2 preliminary views regarding modifications to the Global Maritime Distress and Safety System under Agenda Items 1.8 and 1.91. And we have a preliminary review regarding spectrum requirements impacting ICAO's Global Aeronautical Distress and Safety System under Agenda Item 1.10. Unfortunately, we do not yet have a preliminary review for your consideration under Agenda Item 9.1.4, which are suborbital vehicles. But I could do it under other business, or just now I could let you know that we expect one, or we were hoping to wait until after the upcoming Study Group 5 meetings to see what developed, and we would address that issue hopefully after that, just so you know. So that's all I have as our report.
Any general comments or questions? No? Okay. Joe, why don't you go ahead and present the individual preliminary reviews.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I noticed that the agenda has the agenda items, their text in it, so I won't repeat, if it's okay with you, repeat what the agenda item says. However, with your permission, I'll start with 1.8 and work my way down that way. So under agenda item 1.8, Our proposal for your consideration is to support the activities underway in the ITUR, and based upon the successful conclusion of the activities and the studies, to support the appropriate modifications as developed at the ITU. And at this time, because the studies are so preliminary and we're early in the process, we don't have anything more specific than that to provide you at this time.
Can you identify the document number?
7.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Don.
Any comments? Okay, thanks, Joe.
Great. The next agenda item for your consideration is 1.9.1, which is to consider regulatory actions in the frequency bands 156 to 162 megahertz for GMDSS. Our preliminary review proposes to support the results of the studies, once again, prescribed in Resolution 362, of course, while taking into account the protection of GMDSS and AIS, which is the automatic identification system used by ships at sea. So that's all I have at this time for that agenda item.
Any comments? Seeing none, the item is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next agenda item, 1.9.2. In the agenda, as you can see, it considers modifications to the radio regs for several VHF frequency bands. I won't list them here. And the proposal is to, again, to support the studies while taking into account the protection of existing terrestrial services which operate in existing adjacent bands. And at this time, again, because the studies are not completed, the proposal is to support the studies.
Any comments? Seeing none, the item's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the last agenda item is agenda item 1.10, which is considering spectrum needs for the Global Aeronautical Distress and Safety System, or GADS. And the PV for this agenda item for your consideration is a little more detailed. It first says that ICAO and the requirements will come from ICAO first. That's the intent. And based upon the ICAO requirements, studies will be conducted. At this time, we don't have any studies or results of studies for your review, and that these studies should be done under and with the coordination of ICAO. And that's what we have right now for the preliminary review for agenda item 1.10.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Any comments? Seeing none, the item's approved.
And that's all I have.
Thanks, Joe.
Great. We will move to Informal Working Group 2, covering terrestrial services. Jane Stankiewicz will be presenting the report, and we'll follow the same format we just followed.
Thank you. IWG2 held 5 meetings, and we developed 7 preliminary views on items of interest to terrestrial services, including trains and trackside communication, ITS, IMT, HAPS, other acronyms, above 275, BSS and IMT in the L-band, and 5 gigahertz radars and RLANs. And we have the 7 PVs for consideration.
Great. Any preliminary comments? No? Why don't you go ahead?
All right. In WAC document 11, we address agenda item 1.11, which considers communication between train and trackside. And similar to some of the efforts in IWG1, we support studies under the terms of the resolution to consider harmonization of frequency bands for communication between train and trackside for traffic control, passenger safety, and security for train operations. In this PV, we provide the view that studies towards regional and global harmonization can be satisfied by developing applicable ITUR reports and recommendations, and no change to the radio regulations is required under this agenda item.
Any comments on this document? No? We will deem that approved.
Okay, WAC document 12 considers intelligent transport systems, and the U.S. view in this one supports studies under Resolution 237 And similar to the last one, studies towards the regional and possible global harmonization can be satisfied by developing applicable ITUR reports and recommendations, and no change to the radio regulations is anticipated to be required under this agenda item.
Any comments? Hearing none, it is approved.
WAC document 13 is for agenda item 113 on IMT. The U.S. view provided in this document supports studies under work agenda item 113 in accordance with Resolution 238, and we list the bands in the resolution and to take appropriate action based upon the results of these studies.
Any comments? None? That's approved. Next.
WAC document 14 is for agenda item 114, and this is for HAPS, High Altitude Platform Systems, stations. And the U.S. view here is to facilitate the use of HAP links. The U.S. supports studies in accordance with Resolution 160 and to take appropriate action on the results of these studies, including possible modifications to the existing provisions of HAPS identifications and possible new HAPS identifications. And we list the bands for Region 2 and globally.
Any comments? No comments. That document is approved. Next.
WAC document 15 is on agenda item 115, and similarly this supports studies on sharing compatibility between passive and active services and spectrum needs for active services under 115 under the terms of the Resolution 767. The U.S. will take into account the results of those studies to consider supporting identifications of spectrum in the frequency range 275 to 450 gigahertz for land, mobile, and fixed service applications while maintaining protection of the passive services identified in footnote 5.565.
Any comments? None? We'll deem that one approved.
WAC document 16 addresses agenda item 9.1, issue 9.1.2 on compatibility between IMT and the broadcasting satellite service. The U.S. view in this document notes that these studies are limited to regions 1 and 3, and that any changes to the radio regulations as a result of this agenda item must not impact Region 2 services and applications thereof, nor subject Region 2 to any changed procedural or regulatory provisions.
Any comments on this one? Hearing none, it's approved.
And the last one from IWG2 is WAC document 17, which addresses agenda item 9.1, issue 9.1.5 on radars and RLANs in the 5 gigahertz band. The proposed U.S. view supports studies under this issue to determine the technical and regulatory impact of referencing Recommendation 1638-1 and M 1849-1 with the objective to ensure that no undue constraints are imposed on RLAN's operations if these recommendations are updated.
Comments? Hearing none, the document is approved. Thanks very much.
I'd like to invite Jack Wangerneck up, please, for IWG3, Space Services.
So good morning. I'll see if I can keep the pace and the smooth and efficient operation of your meeting moving. So IWG3 has had 3 meetings since the last WAC meeting, and we bring to this meeting 5 documents, 2 of them dealing with essentially non-geostationary FSS use of various frequency bands, 1 dealing with the possibility of Earth stations in motion operating in parts of the 20 and 30 gigahertz bands, and another dealing with a possible allocation issue for the FSS, fixed satellite service, around 50 gigahertz. And finally, something under agenda item 10. So we're a very forward-looking group, as you can see, looking at a preliminary view on a Work 23 agenda item. So that's a general introduction.
Any comments? Okay. Please go ahead, Jack.
Okay, thank you. So the first document is WAC 18. So this is the one dealing with the possible use of Earth stations in motion in the 17.7 to 19.7 gigahertz and 27.5 to 29.5 gigahertz frequency band, the so-called 20-30 gigahertz frequency bands. And the idea here is to see if we can extend the decisions taken at the last conference. The 500 megahertz above each of those two frequency bands was opened up for earth stations in motion. Those bands are exclusive to the FSS. These bands that are being studied now are shared. And so the idea is to support studies under the terms of the associated resolution, Resolution 158, on the sharing and compatibility of eSIMs, or stations in motion, with current and planned services in the bands, while ensuring the protection and not imposing undue constraints on the services allocated in those bands, and to take appropriate action at the next conference based on the results of studies.
Any comments? Seeing none, it's approved.
Okay, thank you. So the next one is WRC-19. So this is on agenda item 1.6, and this is to consider the development of a regulatory framework for non-geostationary fixed satellite service in what I'll call the 40-50 gigahertz bands. So these bands are already allocated to the FSS, but there's no, the use of these bands by the non-geostationary FSS has not really been studied by the ITU, and so there's no framework in place as there is in some other frequency bands that are already allocated to the FSS. So this is looking to see if we can develop something along those lines for the 40-50 gigahertz bands.
Any comments? Seeing none, it's approved.
Okay, so the next document is WRC-20. So this is one of the issues under agenda item 9.1, specifically issue 9.1.3. And again, it's looking at a non-geostationary FSS issue, and that's basically revisiting the regulatory framework that is already in place in the so-called C-band for what we call new non-geostationary orbit satellite systems. In the past, this band was in fact studied, but it was studied for a particular type of non-geostationary system, a highly elliptical orbit, and that creates a certain interference environment, and therefore we have a regulatory situation to deal with that. Now we want to look at introducing circular orbit systems into this band, so that requires a revisitation of the existing regulatory framework, and of course doing all that while ensuring the protection of existing services and applications.
Any comments? Approved.
Okay, thank you. So then we have another issue under 9.1. This is issue 9.1.9, and this is studies relating to the spectrum needs and possible allocation of the frequency band 51.4 to 52.4 gigahertz to the fixed satellite service Earth to space, so uplink. The band just below that, 50.4 to 51.4, is already allocated to the FSS, so this would be basically a 1 gigahertz extension to that band. And so, of course, there are a number of studies, because it has a possible allocation implications. There are a number of studies that need to be conducted in order to ensure compatibility with existing services, and there are even some adjacent band studies that need to be taken into account as well because of the associated uses of some of the adjacent bands. And of course, all of those studies would be done in accordance with the resolution that was adopted at the last WRC.
Any comments on WAC document 21? Approved.
Okay, and then finally we have document WAC 22 on agenda item 10, and this is the agenda item where you have recommendations being made to council for the inclusion of agenda items for the next conference, and the preliminary conference or preliminary agenda for the conference after that. So this is particularly looking at agenda item 2.4 on the preliminary agenda for WRC-23, and this is to study the spectrum needs and possible new allocation to the fixed satellite service in the frequency band 37.5 to 39.5 in the Earth to space direction. This band is already allocated in the downlink direction, space to Earth, so this is looking at a reverse band operation. And it should be pointed out that this was actually a proposal from CTEL to the last conference for an agenda item. I believe it was actually for WRC-19, and then through the discussions that took place at WRC-15, it was agreed that this would be one of the issues under 9.1. I'm sorry, it would be a agenda item for the preliminary agenda for WRC-23. That's it.
Any comments on WAC document 22? All right, approved.
Very good. Thank you.
We'll move to informal.
One last thing, we do actually have another meeting planned, but it'll be next year, January 10th of next year, and I'm sure that'll be posted in a public notice. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll move to informal working group 4, covering regulatory issues, and Jennifer Manner will present the report.
Thank you, Tom. We have one preliminary view today to report, if that's okay. It's regarding the BSS plan, and it's WAC document 23, to consider the results of studies in accordance with Resolution 557 and review and revise, if necessary, the limitations mentioned in Annex 7 to Appendix 30, one of the BSS plans, while ensuring the protection of and without imposing additional constraints on assignments in the plan and the list in the future development of the BSS service within the plan and existing planned FSS networks. We do have one small typo that we caught on the document that I'd like to correct, if that's okay.
Sure.
While I'm up here. On the second page in the first sentence, there's a statement that says regarding Region 1 that BSS limits may no longer be required. That should actually read Region 2. So Region 1 should be changed to Region 2. And with that,
Great.
I'd like to
Thank
present
you.
that.
All right. Any comments on that document? None? Then it's approved.
Thank you. So we as well are meeting on January 10th. Jackson meetings and ours tend to go hand in hand, so you'll see a notice out on that as
Great.
well.
Thanks,
Thank
Jennifer.
you.
Great. Well, that wraps up for the informal working groups. Thanks again to the chairs for their presentations and to all the members for their work so far and still to come. Moving ahead, I would just call your attention to WAC Document 4, which is the upcoming ITU-R meetings and the WRC-19 preparatory timeline. You'll see on there we have scheduled the next meeting of this committee for February 24th. That is to be ahead of what will be the next CTEL meeting in the spring. Our meeting scheduled for February 24th at 10 a.m., an hour earlier than we normally meet, so please note that. Moving to the next item is other business. Do we have other business? Yes, sir.
Bob Weller with NAB. Is the CTEL location for the CTEL meeting in March been set? Okay, thanks.
No. Any other items, questions, or new business? No? Anything else, sir? Chris?
I just want to circle back and see if anyone from NTIA is here to if wants to say anything. Nope. I guess NTIA doesn't have anything for us today, so that's fine. Thanks.
Very good. That wraps up the meeting, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.